guys, I went and investigated everything carefully to make sure you know the truth of what you've been told about Jesus. Got it? So would he be prone to making these types of errors? No, no. That gives us some hope. What do you mean? There's got to be some sort of reconciliation between what our history accounts with this character are and what Luke's saying in his gospel. I'm going to err on the fact that Luke is telling us the truth because he's investigated this and find out where's the mistake in our history books. Where is the mistake? Well, let's see some of the things that the church history has to say. Maybe they will give us some clues. Well, from the very beginning, Justin Martyr and Tertullian both reference the existence of Roman records that anyone could go and search for themselves about the enrollment of Mary and Joseph in Bethlehem. So in other words, when these two guys were writing, they said, you know, you could go to the Hall of Records that the Romans have, and you can see for yourselves the taxation registration of Mary and Joseph. Wow. Really? Yes. Now there is a village in the land of the Jews, 35 stadia from Jerusalem, in which Jesus was born. And as you can ascertain also from the registers of the taxing made under Cyrenius, your first procurator in Jerusalem. This is what Justin Martyr wrote. So in other words, this idea of looking up the taxation records was available even at this period of time. I think that that's remarkable. Tertullian said, his enrollment in the census of Augustus, that most faithful witness of the Lord's nativity, kept in the archives of Rome. He said, aren't they there? Well, go see for yourself. In other words, these are two men. These are just two examples of how the early church fathers said that these records of Jesus' birth, as it is written in the gospel accounts, can be verified yourself. You can go and read them for yourself. So the records were there as late as these two dates that these two fathers would say anyone can go and see them. Again, I think that that's remarkable that these records were in existence. Now, unfortunately, in the passage of time, as far as I'm aware of, there is no archaeological reference to these that we found in Roman records. It's too bad. And I dare say part of it, or the major part of it, was destroyed when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Those would have been the best records to show these kinds of taxation records. That was all destroyed. So much of this that these two fathers are talking about have probably been lost in the annals of time. These are the references to these two quotes and where I got them. Back to this guy Quirinus. How do we reconcile this? Well, Justin made mention of a man named Cyrenius. Is this a possible reference to Quirinus? If it's the same person, then again, we're still stuck with how do you explain the fact that our historical records still show him as governor at 6 AD, not during the BC? Well, it so happens that when you dig a little deeper into history, you find out that this man was governor twice. Yes, in 6 AD, but he was also governor between 8 and 4 BC. And it's like, where's the proof? Well, I'm glad you asked. These are the actual, we have something called the Oxyrhynchus Papyrus. that was discovered in Egypt that registered the 8 major census between Nero and in the future. From that time, the records show that there were 4 major censuses from 28 BC to 14 CE. These are just 4 of the major 8. One was in 28 BC, another was in 8 BC. Another one at 6 AD, and another one at 14 AD. So this confirms that there was a census. This record, this Egyptian record, shows that there was a census that was given by Augustus in 8 BC. And that Quirinius was governing Syria at that time as well. Now, this link here, I want to just show you this. This is just a remarkable link. I really like it. It's to something called the Associates for Biblical Research, and it is pinpointing the date of Christ's birth. It's quite an extensive research document, and it takes into account much of what I'm going to present to you. I would really recommend you looking at this link where it talks about where Herod the Great fills in the census of Quirinius and how he was governor in Judea from, he puts it 9 to 6 BC. Other references I have are between 8 and 4 BC, but still within that time frame that we are talking about. Okay? And so forth. And it goes on and on. It's quite an example. I'm not going to go into this. If it's something you want to link to, I've sent these 2 PDFs early to Alvaro, who will hopefully link them up for you to check out on your own. This is well done, well researched, well annotated document that I would refer you to. That again, I took much of this. So it's clear that Quirinius was governor of Syria during the time of the 8 BC taxation registration that caused Mary and Joseph to leave Nazareth and go to Bethlehem. So we've now narrowed it down. Jesus was born somewhere between 8 BC and 4 BC. Somewhere in that time. Is there anything else that can help us with this? Well, take a look at the picture that I have here. What's this a picture of? Shepherds. The shepherds who were watching their fields at night. Remember? Remember? You know that? Okay. Now, can we figure out the season in which Jesus was? Was it the summer? Was it the winter? Was it the fall? Was it the spring? Spring. Spring was it winter? Most likely not, because the Gospels say that the shepherds were watching their fields at night, remember? Yes. If it was winter, I don't know if you've been in the desert. I don't know if you've been to Palm Springs during the winter. Like now. At this time in Palm Springs, it is freaking cold. Not just cold, freaking cold. All right? You'd say, well, it's the desert. I don't care. At the winter, it is cold. Going to high desert where I work, in Acton here, it's about a 10 to 20 degree difference. Like I said, they tell us we might have snow days. 30 minutes away from here. High desert. Snow. Right? I've got news for you. In wintertime in Israel, there is a light dusting of snow that can fall during this time of year. Shepherds watching sheep are guarding and protecting them to make sure that they are cared for. If it's that cold you don't keep animals out. They freeze to death. Sheep are stupid animals. They don't have the common sense to take care of themselves when it's cold. If it was at night and if it was at winter time like this, I guarantee you the shepherds would have kept the sheep in pens or stalls or caves. They would not be watching them at night. They would be trying to keep them warm. Okay? So I think it's safe to eliminate the fact that Jesus was born in the wintertime. Otherwise, the Gospels, again, don't make sense. Why, again, were shepherds out watching at night if it's cold like this? That, again, no, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit what the Gospels say. It's nice and it's Christmas time now, I get it, but it doesn't make sense with what the Gospels are saying. Well, then when was he born? It must have been a warmer time of the year, like spring, like summer. That's more likely. Well, is there any other hints in this account that would tell us if it was summer or spring? Lambing season. Why were they out at night to begin with? For one, it had to have been a warmer time of the year, so spring or summer. Why were they out watching their fields? Why didn't they just go to bed and let the sheep, again, be put in pens? Because it was most likely lambing time when the ewes give birth to lambs. Well, when does that normally occur? Spring. Spring is usually the time in which sheep give birth to their lambs. So that makes more sense. So it explains why the shepherds were out at night to begin with and not just sleeping. And B, why they could be out at night without freezing. Am I making sense here? Yes. Okay, so we're getting a better picture as to when Jesus was born. It was between 8 and 4 BC, and it was most likely in the spring, which explains why the shepherds were out in the first place. It would have been warmer, and they were out to make sure they were there to help a ewe give birth if there was some trouble. That's what shepherds do. Anything else in the gospel accounts to further narrow this down? Well, yes, there is another clue. The star. Okay, you know, like this, like we saw in the video, right? Oh, the glorious star. Oh, it's so bright. We put it on the top of the curtain. It's the brightest thing. It shone both day and night. Remember our Christmas songs? You know, it had a tail as big as a kite, right? You've heard the Christmas songs like that, you know? And it must have looked something like this. Oh, maybe it was a meteor or something like that, right? That's what we would say nowadays. Well, Matthew's account is the only one that records this star, and we read it earlier. Okay, want to read it again? Sure, why not? It's Bible study. In the time of Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east to Jerusalem saying, "Where is the child who had been born? For we observed his star at the rising and have come to pay him homage." Okay, so that's where this star comes from. And Matthew is the only one that records this event. Luke doesn't. All right? Well, before we start talking about what the star probably was, let's dispel the idea of what it couldn't be. What couldn't this star that the wise men saw could be? Because we saw in the video in the beginning, it wasn't this bright beaming light down like that. Why? Why couldn't it have been like that, Chip? You're just against the whole idea of Christmas. You're just taking all the fun out of Christmas. No, 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 no. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it could not have been a comet. It could not have been a comet, like Halley's Comet. You know why? Because in ancient times, comets were seen as bad omens, unlucky things. They were portents of disaster. Even as late as 1910, when Halley's Comet came around the Earth, people were being sold comet pills to prevent them from the diseases that were in the tail of a comet that was going to come by Earth. This is in modern times, okay? People thought crazy things like that. In ancient times, like in Jesus' day, a comet was seen as just an omen of doom. It was the end of the world, okay? Couldn't have been a comet. It couldn't have been what we would call a supernova either, a star exploding in the sky. Maybe it was that, an exploding star. Why? Well, for one, and this explains both of these reasons, there is no historical records anywhere on Earth around this time between 8 and 4 BC that record anything unusual of this event. No meteorites, no exploding stars, no comets, nothing. You say, well, how do you know that, Chip? You didn't live back then. Well, yes, I did, and I saw nothing in the sky. Let me just tell you that. No, that's not it. You see, unlike us nowadays, who have our skies covered with clouds and smog, and we don't see the stars unless we go to the mountains, in ancient times, when the sun went down, the sky lit up with stars. You could see forever with them, and people were fascinated by it. From the time of the Babylonians forward, we have more historical records about the motion of the stars and what we call planets than we probably have of any other thing. And it wasn't just the Babylonians, it was the Chinese, it was the Mayans, it was the Hindus, it was the Arabs, it was the Greeks. The whole world recorded what they saw in the sky and left very accurate records of what these events were. In fact, it was